Lot going on out there in sports media. So to help us break some of it down, Naveen Sarma, Managing Director of S&P Global Ratings, who's long focused on the media sector. Naveen, thanks for hopping on with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're still in the thick of these Paris games, so I kind of want to start there. Coming out of the last couple of Olympics, whether that's Tokyo and Pyeongchang and Beijing, there was a lot of questions about the Olympics as a media property. What are you taking away from these Paris games as far as whether that is a long-term viable grade A media property for NBC Universal?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it depends on where the Olympics are held. I mean, look at Paris. The ratings are up huge. People are watching it during the day. I think they've done a very good job with Peacock. I was very disappointed when they rolled out Peacock and then we went to Tokyo and they didn't really do a very good job of utilizing Peacock to show a lot of content. It's interesting to see if, the next time they do an Olympics someplace in the world that's not Europe or the United States, do they get the same kind of attendance? But clearly, if it's in Europe, the next one's in Los Angeles, that should do incredibly well. So I'm almost saying the answer is it depends on where the Olympics is. If it's in the Western Hemisphere, it'll do incredibly well. If it's someplace else, maybe not as well.
Like, I totally agree that Peacock, it is night and day from what that platform has had in the past. And there's almost like it feels like half the audience is watching during that 2 to 5 window. I mean, has there any concern on your front or on Wall Street that they're having to combine that 2 to 5 p.m. Eastern window with the prime time to get anywhere close to those numbers that they previously had, probably when they first signed this deal?
No, because I think what we've seen with every sport except for football, audiences have declined. And if you actually kind of look at it on a year by year basis rather than every 4 years, which is the way that we look at it when we compare it either to Tokyo or to some of the Olympics pre-pandemic, there's been a steep drop off, but really it's kind of in line with all the other programming on television. So the fact that they can get this kind of an audience means that they've been able to generate, huge viewing hours as well as advertising revenue.
I want to switch gears a little bit to women's sports. We saw last year NWSL got their deal done. Now it's the WNBA's turn. They got a huge increase for their media rights. That's going to run out a couple of years, 11 years, I believe, but there's a look in a couple of years. Do you think the WNBA got all it could out there in the market?
We'll see, right? A lot of the viewing and the audience gains over the last couple of years has really been from the NCAAs. And so this is kind of the first season where we'll see what the ratings look like for just the WNBA on a standalone basis. I suspect they're going to have a big step up in the next couple of years. Maybe if they'd done this on a standalone basis, they probably could have gotten a lot more money. But, it's hard to tell. They're playing with partners who don't have a lot of money. And the fact that they were tied in with the NBA meant that they had to go with those partners. If they'd gone, exclusively and gone to maybe a streaming service, they probably could have gotten a lot more money.
Interesting. I know they're going to get some, they have some of these ancillary deals that can maybe get them $60 million more. Those are their side deals like CBS, Ion, NBA TV had part of that deal. Maybe that goes off of NBA TV now, especially since the NBA in another season or so isn't going to be in business with Warner Brothers Discovery. Interesting what they could do with that package. Maybe bring in a completely new media partner.
Right, exactly.
Well, what about some of the other smaller properties out there? There's a new 3-on-3 women's basketball league. There's the PWHL. They're out there looking for a media deal. Is there money in the market for some of these smaller to medium-sized women's sports leagues?
I guess there is. It's interesting, if you go back to like the dawn of streaming, which is, 4 years ago, it was all about making a lot of original content. Well, they've all backed off of that. Now the bubble feels a bit like it's sports. You got to put sports on your streaming service to get people to sign up and to watch. And so, companies are spending an awful lot of money chasing every sports deal that they can possibly get. Yeah, will somebody throw money at some of these leagues? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're certainly not going to get like, NBA money, but there might be like a revenue share agreement or something where they take less money because they know they can reach a broader audience. Certainly that money will get thrown around. Let's see what happens over the next couple of years, and let's see if people actually watch all of these sports rights or all these, all the sports on streaming. Maybe it doesn't work out, and then the bubble bursts.
Yeah, a lot of streaming platforms out there. They all need content. So, like you said, there's players might not be thinking about it. 5 years ago, I wasn't thinking about Ion. I wasn't thinking about the CW as places for live sports, but they completely changed their business model. So there may be new players, new streaming platforms, and broadcast networks. It's just a very interesting time. We kind of talked about it a little bit with the NBA deal and the big uptick that they were able to see there. WNBA, you mentioned kind of being tied there a little bit. Do you think that somebody like NBC overpaid, NBC Universal overpaid for that B package of rights?
It's a great question. I wouldn't use the word overpaid. They paid an awful lot of money for that, right?
It was a big,
Right.
big, big,
And
big
especially in
thing.
comparison to what Disney paid
Yes.
for a package that's considered a little bit better. I'm going to put them in the same bucket as the tech companies. They've got a different set of returns. They've got a different set of financial or when they do the math, it's different than what like a Disney would do. And in this case, I'm sure what Comcast did was looked at the affiliate fees that they have to pay to Warner Brothers and said, hey, if we take it away, we don't have to pay as much. And so the math is a little bit different. And so it's a little bit of an uneven playing field. So what we may consider as overpaying for a traditional media company may not be necessarily all overpaying for a company that's a bit different than a traditional media company.
I mean, it's definitely three-dimensional chess that Brian Roberts is trying to play here. But I mean, when you look at it just on the face of it, yeah, they're paying for that B NBA deal, pretty much what CBS is playing for its NFL deal, which is
Right.
another reason the NFL is going to want to get back in the market and get some, get some more dollars
Yeah.
whenever they can. Back to that NBA deal, what does Wall Street, what does the market think about the WBD now being on the outside looking in after one more season?
It's a problem. It's a huge problem because, it's the anchor that supports the linear TV networks. It's the tonnage that would have filled in for Max and given people a reason to sign up outside of the original programming. But that would have been a huge driver of attendance on Max. So it puts them in a very difficult situation. It also, from a brand standpoint, says to a lot of people, look, they're not that serious. And clearly they are serious, but it also says that, they're willing to let things lose or go away. And maybe they aren't in the same tier in terms of, media companies as a Disney or a Comcast, which has a lot of sports rights.
Yeah, and Comcast was sitting on a mountain of cash because they drove up the price on that Fox Disney deal that they didn't get. So they had the money for that sort of deal. Didn't make that deal a couple of years ago. So obviously Brian Roberts, NBC Universal, Comcast, not struggling for any funds these days.
Right. I think the other thing that Comcast has that other companies don't have, Disney does, is they have a theme park business, which throws off a lot of cash, and so that helps. And I know that the way that they think about NBC is NBC needs to operate on a standalone basis, but it's helped by the fact that it's got a theme park business that throws off cash flow.
Well, I just hope they're not going to be getting into the Harry Potter cruise business to try to compete with Disney as well. I'm not sure we need that. I'm not sure my kids are going to, they're going to be begging me to go on these Harry Potter cruises next. We don't, no, nobody needs that.
It might be a good idea though.
All right, let's switch a little bit to M&A. Obviously, one of the biggest things going on is the Skydance merger, potential merger, we'll say, with Paramount. Does that reach the finish line?
Oh, I think it does. I think, we've got a 45-day window where a number of people are looking at it. We've seen a couple of people already say they're not interested. It makes it hard to compete against somebody like a Larry Ellison, knowing that he can always up the bid if somebody comes in with a higher offer. So, and plus you also have to get Sherry Redstone to agree to it. Clearly, the Redstone family as well as the Ellison family see eye to eye on a lot of things. They made some promises to her to keep the business together. I don't see somebody stepping in, although we'll see over the next, I guess, 20 days or so.
Something we kind of talked about, and part of this Skydance Paramount issue is if the deal does go through, the NFL might have the right to opt out of that NFL deal and kind of do a look in. Do you think they kind of hold their feet to the fire and really get some sort of increase in the rights fee, or will they come to some sort of other agreement on some putting the money somewhere else?
I don't think the NFL will do that to CBS on a standalone basis. What I mean by that is, I think the NFL will look at the rights deals for all of their broadcast partners, and they're going to look at what the NBA got, and they're going to say, "Boy, we want to renegotiate this. We've got increasing ratings. We do, multiples of what the NBA does in terms of audience ratings. We want more money." So I think you might see them try to do something around the 2029, 2030 season when they have the ability to renegotiate. They might do that ahead of time. I mean, the other thing from a Skydance Paramount point of view is the NFL has a long relationship with both CBS, but also with Skydance.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a venture, and they have a little bit of an ownership, the NFL does,
I feel like they're basically becoming NFL Films, Skydance. They're doing all of these
Right.
original deals. They did the Hallmark deal for the Chiefs film we're going to have to watch over the holiday season.
Right, exactly. So I don't see them doing something specifically to Paramount or to Skydance.
Going back to Warner Brothers Discovery, what other potentials maybe for M&A with WBD in a post NBA world?
That's
I'm
clearly
not
that's
sure that's what David Zaslav like to hear. I don't know if he likes
yeah.
that side.
At the end of the day, what they need to do is to operate the business better, which is they need to get the studio, start generating hits and generating cash flow. They need the linear TV business to not decline as quickly as it currently is. And part of that is keeping advertisers on the service. Clearly, they don't have impact on cord cutting, but at least if they can get the business to not stabilize, but to decline less than it did like last year. And they've got to get the streaming business to profitability and sustain profitability. Does that mean they have to go out and buy something? I don't know. There's not a lot out there that makes sense other than obviously a broadcast network, which might provide support to the linear TV business. But that's really about it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's really about executing on their strategy and getting that strategy to work.
Now, obviously, a lot of my next question is going to be based on maybe how the election results go. But what are some other potential big M&A opportunities out there that could affect sports?
So I think the biggest challenge for legacy media is to prove that they can get the profitability on streaming and reverse the declines that we're seeing across their businesses. And part of the challenge there is that they're competing not just against themselves, but also against tech companies that have a different return profile. Amazon doesn't really care as much about making money on television or on video as getting people to buy diapers and books and stuff like that, right? It's a retail business. Apple wants you to buy more cell phones. And so, in a way, the media companies are fighting an uphill battle where they have to fight against companies that say, we can spend, the amount of money that Amazon spent on Lord of the Rings for the rights and then for the first season. Media companies could never do that. And so it's a bit difficult for them to be able to do that. And so they've got to prove to us that they can get to scale on streaming, get the profitability, and actually start reversing some of the overall trends, not necessarily the linear TV trends, but the overall trends that have led to, revenue and EBITDA declines over the last bunch of years. And that'll make them sustainable businesses. If that doesn't happen, we're going to see fewer and fewer standalone independent media companies.
All right, Naveen, we always wrap these up with a couple of quick hitter sorts of questions. So I want to start with UFC. Do you think they see a 3x increase in the next media deal? And do they have to leave ESPN to get it?
I think they will have to leave ESPN to get that. They might not necessarily want to do that in the sense of ESPN has been a great partner for them since they went on to ESPN, both in terms of coverage from ESPN, from SportsCenter. So they may not necessarily say we want to take the money. They may want to be able to continue with a partnership with ESPN where they get the reach and maybe they take a little less money.
What's the biggest macroeconomic headwind for sports media?
It's the consumer. If we're all dependent on the consumer to go and sign up for all of these services to subscribe and watch all of the sports, if there's a recession and consumers go from subscribing to 4 services to 2 services, you're going to have a number of companies that are spending a lot of money on sports programming that aren't going to get the audiences, and that's a huge risk to the rights, future rights payments.
Couple big services coming online probably in the next year. This fall, Venue Sports. That's the skinny bundle from Warner Brothers Discovery, Fox, and Disney. You also have ESPN standalone OTT service planned for 2025. Do these find success in the market?
I think the second one does. I think ESPN standalone is the one that we're all really focusing on. The venue service is nice. We've heard Lachlan Murdoch say they think they can get to 5 million subs after a number of years. Look, it's an incomplete skinny bundle, right? It's nothing more than that. If you want to watch your football, it's incomplete. If you want to watch your basketball, it's incomplete. So there may be some subscribers or some people who want to subscribe to it, but I don't necessarily seeing it being a big success. And I think if they get to 5 million, I'll probably be surprised.
At first, I thought it was a lowball number from the Murdochs, but maybe that is where it lands. We'll see.
Well, look at all of the other virtual streaming services, whether it's it's Hulu TV or it's Sling or it's YouTube. They don't have a lot of subscribers. The only one who's got a lot of subscribers is YouTube. And so I think it'll be an uphill battle to get to 5 million.
All right, Naveen, you went to a couple of big college hockey programs, undergrad and grad, RPI, BU. What's your favorite college hockey moment?
It's RPI. Although I will tell you at BU, I was there when Tony Amonte was skating for BU, and he would score whenever he wanted. He would just pick up the puck, skate down the ice, and score whenever he wanted. But it was RPI because it's my alma mater. It's where I went to undergrad. It was sleeping out for hockey tickets, which we did. It's a tradition at RPI. We get woken up the morning of by the dean. We watch slap shots sitting outside the Union. It's getting all painted up, and RPI is a great place to watch hockey. It's a small arena, although it's one of the bigger ones in the country, and the fans are rabid. I guess maybe because we had nothing better to do.
I tell you what, after taking in a Michigan Ohio State college hockey game when I was in law school, it is an underrated sport, college hockey. Fanatic fans, really great. If you haven't checked out, if anybody hasn't checked out a college hockey game, I highly recommend it.
Absolutely.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this. What is the biggest story in media that you are paying attention to for the rest of 2024?
With media, clearly it's about the path to profitability. I mean, really what we're focusing on is Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers is struggling to try to stabilize its business and return to any kind of growth. And that's really the one that, from a bondholder perspective, bondholders are most concerned about because if they can't get their leverage down, I mean, the equity will follow if they get leverage down. But if they can't get the leverage down, it's a big problem for the company going forward. It's just it's got high leverage for an investment grade company.
All right, now what's the biggest thing you're following in sports?
Sure, it's clearly the lawsuit that's going on right now between Warner Brothers and the NBA. It's not unprecedented. This has happened in the past. I think I saw something about Roone Artledge suing the NBA, or at least going after the NBA back in 1973. But clearly, the league has a lot more power today than it did in 1973. And a partner, a broadcast partner, suing a league has lots of ramifications, not just for this particular contract, but for future negotiations where Warner goes and negotiates for whether it's Major League Baseball or if they go and negotiate for like a UFC contract. It has a lot of ramifications, and so how that plays out and how does Warner Brothers look after the fact is something that's clearly really important.
Harkening back to the Roone Arledge days, the info I didn't know I needed. This is what you get on this podcast. High level information. Naveen Sarma, Managing Director of S&P Global Ratings. We really appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.